Discover the amazing truth: every single moment can lead to a transformative purpose in life. Sarah's life felt like an endless cycle of waiting tables and dusting furniture in strangers' homes. The rain drummed relentlessly against the small window of her modest house, mirroring the relentless worries that clouded her mind. Every drop seemed to emphasize her struggles as she juggled work and a spirited 7-year-old, Ethan, whose bright smile seemed to light her darkest days. Yet, beneath the surface, she wrestled with frustration. Her parents had taught her the value of hard work, but even that seemed feeble against mounting bills and their relentless demands. She wanted something more than a paycheck. She wanted a life filled with purpose. Today, that purpose felt even more elusive. As she opened the creaky attic door, a flood of memories rushed back of her grandmother's laughter and the stories that danced around their candlelit dinners. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten relics, but among the dusty boxes, she stumbled upon a trunk that bore her family name. It was her grandmother's. With trembling hands, she opened it to find a journal, its leather cover faded but inviting. Curiosity surged within her as she flipped through the pages, discovering her grandmother's dreams of crafting elegant furniture that showcased beauty over profit. Each entry ignited a flicker of hope deep within Sarah, awakening an urge to create that she hadn't realized had been dormant for so long. Her heart raced as visions of artisanal coffee tables and handmade chairs danced in her mind. But as excitement bloomed, so did a wave of doubt. Who was she to think she could rise above the whispers of disdain that followed her? Would her creations be worthy of any appreciation, or were they just echoes of stubborn pride? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With newfound determination, she carved out a corner in her living room, lit by a soft lamp that felt like a beacon of potential. Days turned into nights as she worked, transforming rough wood into a simple coffee table, each stroke of the sandpaper releasing layers of her own insecurities. Yet, as the piece began to take shape, so did the suffocating weight of expectation. The art fair loomed in the distance like an impending storm. Could she really showcase her work in a space dominated by wealth and privilege? Her heart sank as she recalled the reactions she'd witnessed at previous events: muffled laughter, dismissive glances thrown her way like shadows of doubt. What if they saw her as just a waitress, a nobody trying to play a role in a world that prized sophistication over grit? Each thought sent her spiraling deeper into uncertainty, leaving her breathless with fear. Just when glimmers of hope flickered bright, the specter of past failures loomed over her like a heavy shroud. In moments where doubt threatened to consume her, she clung to her grandmother's words, the wise reflections penned in the margins of the journal, a guiding light tempting her towards something greater. But just as she was ready to embrace her destiny, a final revelation awaited, one that teased at the edges of her understanding and threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew. Balancing on the precipice of doubt and ambition, could she find the strength to confront the looming judgment and redefine what it meant to be an artist in her own right? The moment buzzed with tension, holding the potential for transformation, but leaving Sarah teetering on the edge. With the rough edges of her coffee table smoothed out under her careful hands, Sarah inhaled deeply, taking in the scent of sawdust that hung thick in the air. The small corner of her living room had transformed into a makeshift workshop, a sanctuary where she could free herself from the weight of doubt. Still, the unresolved fear gnawed at her resolve like a hangnail that wouldn't heal. What seemed like a burst of artistic clarity was now a battleground between her ambition and her trepidation. The journal lay open beside her, pages fluttering with ideas and aspirations while she wrestled with her next steps. Each line she read revealed her grandmother's passion entwined with the desire for recognition, a dynamic that resonated profoundly. Could it be that she was imbued with this same need to be seen, to matter? Sarah's fingers traced the words. They felt like a lifeline but also a reminder of her own insecurities. The echoes of her grandmother's journey reverberated through her, the highs and lows of creativity captured in ink. Moments later, determination washed over her. She needed to get out of her head. A flicker of inspiration struck. If she couldn't find acceptance within the walls of fancy galleries, perhaps she could create her own space. She envisioned hosting a small gathering, inviting friends, family, and neighbors. This wouldn't just be an exhibition, it would be a community event where souls could celebrate authentic creativity, where mixed backgrounds collided in vibrant expression. As she plotted out the details, her heart quickened with a mix of excitement and dread. What if no one came? Or worse, what if they came only to critique? All the what-ifs tumbled through her mind like a barrel rolling downhill, gaining momentum with each negative thought. Silencing those voices required a forceful act of will. She grabbed an ink pen and scribbled down affirmations from the journal's margins, transcribing her grandmother's wisdom onto bright sheets of paper. With a recent addition to her routine, each morning began with these affirmations. Your voice deserves to be heard. Art flourishes in the individual's truth. They felt foreign and empowering, and they slowly started to replace the whispers of inadequacy that had lingered for far too long. Days passed, yet every new dawn brought a fresh wave of doubt. With each piece she crafted, from small wooden ornaments to custom shelves, she confronted a choice: either retreat into safety or step boldly into an uncertain future. That choice weighed heavily on her mind as the day of the gathering approached. As she prepared the modest space, setting out home-baked treats alongside her handcrafted furniture, anticipation curdled with anxiety. Wouldn't it be easier to cancel, to remain cocooned in the comfort of her familiar routine? But somewhere deep inside, she felt the flicker of hope, too brilliant to snuff out. When the doorbell finally rang, her heart raced. One by one, familiar faces filled her small home, laughter mingling with the sweet aroma of baked goods. In that moment, Sarah realized that being an artist wasn't solely about the pieces she created but also about the connection and joy her work could inspire. She was not alone in her pursuit. Her friends leaned against the walls, admiring her creations, weaving a tapestry of support that slowly colored her doubts with warmth. As the visitors engaged in conversation, a thought struck her. Could she embrace the role of a community artist, reaching out, connecting, sharing stories? It felt thrilling but daunting, like stepping off a ledge and hoping there were wings to catch her fall. Yet, as the conversations flowed, she noticed a stranger at the edge of the gathering, quietly observing. Unfamiliar and poised, she had an air of authority that sparked curiosity. Sarah's pulse quickened as she considered an unshakable truth: this wasn't merely an exhibition. It was the beginning of an uncertain journey toward becoming the artist she wanted to be. Just as she prepared to introduce herself to the stranger, she paused, sensing a monumental shift in her path, as if this moment could change everything. Would this encounter unleash new opportunities or serve as another reminder of her limitations? With a deep breath brimming with both anxiety and audacity, she took a step forward into the unknown, not yet aware of the transformative revelations that awaited her. As Sarah crossed the small distance toward the stranger, her footing felt shaky, a combination of excitement and trepidation. The woman stood with an aura of polish that struck an immediate contrast to Sarah's cozy yet chaotic workshop. Deep down, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this moment could either propel her forward or throw her into a spiral of despair. "Hi, I'm Sarah," she said, adding a touch of warmth that she hoped masked her uncertainty. The woman's sharp gaze softened momentarily, and Sarah felt an inkling of ease. "I'm Elise," the stranger responded, her voice composed and inviting. "You have quite a gathering here. I'm intrigued by your work." Elise's presence was magnetic, and Sarah felt a swell of affirmation rush through her. This could be the validation she craved. Yet, the underlying fear remained: what if Elise merely paid lip service? What if she was here to critique rather than appreciate? As they fell into conversation, Sarah felt compelled to share the origins of her pieces. The wooden coffee table at its center, lovingly created from recycled materials, was a tribute to her grandmother. Each intricate carving chronicled a fragment of family history, and for the first time, she noticed how Elise leaned in, genuinely invested in her narrative. "I see the love you've poured into your work, Sarah. This is more than just craftsmanship, it's storytelling," Elise remarked, wrapping the moment in an unexpected embrace of encouragement. It ignited a flicker of pride within Sarah, shimmering beyond the hesitations that had clung to her like shadows. Yet, as they discussed the nuances of art, Sarah couldn't help but sense a layer of expectation behind Elise's interest. Was she simply a professional in the art world, or did she seek something deeper from artists like Sarah? The uncertainty loomed like a thick fog, and confronting it pulled Sarah into a spiraling introspection. "What are you hoping to achieve with your art?" Elise asked, her penetrating gaze assessing Sarah's response. Caught off guard, Sarah felt the weight of the question anchor her. Could she articulate her ambitions without exposing her vulnerabilities? "I want to create a space where people feel seen, where stories can be shared," she replied cautiously, aware that her words felt flimsy against Elise's scrutiny. A flicker of surprise crossed Elise's face. "That's refreshing. Many artists focus solely on aesthetics. You're tapping into an emotional connection." Yet doubt crept back in, shrouding her initial courage. "But what if I don't have the talent to make that connection? What if I'm just mediocre?" Elise's expression shifted from interest to resolve. "Mediocrity is relative. It's those who dare to share their truths that leave a lasting impact. You'll never know your potential unless you challenge yourself." Something shifted within Sarah, an awakening of sorts. Elise's words were stirring, but they also left fragments of anxiety. The confrontation between her aspiration and self-doubt was undeniable. Would she take those words to heart, or let fear dictate her next step? Just then, laughter erupted from another gathering nearby, teasing the raw edge of her emotions. She turned back to Elise, ready to delve deeper into this unexpected ally. Each heartbeat felt like a decision unfolding. Would she trust Elise, accept the challenge, and possibly redefine her artistic journey? As the evening progressed, Sarah felt a newfound energy fanning the flames of her ambition. Yet the lingering apprehension tugged at her thoughts like a persistent whisper, warning about the cost of vulnerability. As she returned to Elise, preparing to navigate this new relationship, an exhilarating question loomed in her mind. Was she truly ready to evolve, to leave behind the safe confines of her self-doubt? Caught in this internal conflict, Sarah felt that she stood at a crossroads, the potential for growth tinged with the risk of failure. The moment sat heavily upon her, yet the thrill of possibility urged her to push forward. As Sarah prepared to push past her fears, a word from the gathering echoed, sending her heart racing. Opportunities. Would they arise with Elise's guidance, or would they diminish in the shadows of her hesitation? The next few days found Sarah in an unusual state of constant reflection. Elise's words echoed in her mind like a persistent melody, the kind that spirals into new rhythms over time, yet remains rooted in a haunting refrain of uncertainty. She felt an urgency to explore her craft more deeply, yet the shadows of doubt clung tightly to her resolve. Every day in the workshop, Sarah approached the pieces she had created with a melange of ambition and apprehension. Armed with the intention of embracing her vulnerability, she scribbled down her thoughts about each item she worked on, the wood shapes that yearned to become more than mere reminders of her grandmother, but instead, legacies of her own voice. Creativity had often felt like a solitary struggle, but now it was invigorated by the prospect of building connections. Yet, as she sat cross-legged on the dusty floor with a piece of reclaimed wood before her, the familiar impulse to shrink back began to rear its head. What if Elise was wrong? What if her art couldn't truly resonate with anyone? The thought pierced her. She was drawn like a moth to the flame of self-doubt, wondering if it had always been there, warmly familiar yet dangerously consuming. In an attempt to combat her spiraling fears, she began crafting a new piece, molding a narrative around the resilience found in family bonds, the joy and pain intertwined. Guided by Elise's encouragement, Sarah envisioned an installation representing not only her life but the lives of many who grappled with their journeys. Harnessing the creative energy of vulnerability felt both terrifying and liberating. It had the potential to transform her unease into a conduit for connection. With each stroke of sandpaper, she questioned her intentions. Did she want her art to inspire or merely serve as a self-affirmation? Would she allow her insecurities to choke the ideas before they found freedom? These questions fractured her focus, but deep down, she understood they were vital. To know what she was fighting against could crystallize the direction she needed to take. She leaned further into her work, but each day revealed gnawing fears. Sometimes she stood before her creations, the wood smooth under her fingertips, feeling both intoxicated by possibility and paralyzed by uncertainty. The workshop, filled with comfort and isolation, became both her sanctuary and prison. The tension reached a tipping point when she decided to invite Elise back to the workshop to see the progress. The mere thought sent her heart racing and stomach flipping, setting off a cyclone of nerves within her. What if Elise discovered that behind her bravado, there still lay a girl cripplingly unsure of her creative prowess? Would an art expert sense the inadequacies lurking beneath her intentions? But a spark ignited in her. Perhaps it was time to confront those fears head-on. Maybe presenting her work would allow her to understand if Elise's belief in her accuracy was warranted. Perhaps, in that act of sharing, there would emerge new clarity. As she finalized her piece for Elise's return visit, she experienced a moment of defiance. Maybe even if she did fail, it wouldn't define her. Maybe stepping out into the light meant risking exposure both exhilarating and terrifying. When the day arrived, Sarah could hardly breathe, standing in her cluttered workshop surrounded by fragments of herself and her past. Each item, a spoken word in her silent narrative, yearned for that moment of recognition. She glanced around at her creations, taking a deep breath that felt bolstered by determination. Elise arrived with her signature composure, and as their eyes met, Sarah sensed a weighty expectation in the air. This was the moment that could tip her toward either validation or vulnerability. With her heart pounding like a distant drum, Sarah was ready to unveil her deepest fears and dreams. Would Elise see the potential that lay within her creations? Or would her own doubts swallow her whole? Yet, despite the tension coiling tightly in her chest, she was resolute. It was time to confront those fears and step boldly into an uncertain future. As Elise approached, Sarah felt a rush of anticipation, an exhilarating question unfurling in her mind. Would this encounter drag her deeper into the realm of self-discovery, or would it reveal the things she had been too afraid to face? As Elise stepped into the workshop, the atmosphere shifted. The faint scent of wood dust mingled with fresh anxiety. Sarah's creations stood valiantly around her, each silently urging her to speak. Elise's poised examination of the space lit a fire of vulnerability in Sarah, igniting both fear and excitement. "Sarah, I can feel the energy in here," Elise remarked, her voice resonating like a gentle tide, encouraging yet firm. "Let us see what you've been up to." With a shaky breath, Sarah stepped forward, each footfall echoing like a heartbeat in her ears. The installation was meant to symbolize resilience and connection, but to her, it represented naked exposure. As she gestured towards her work, she could feel the heat of Elise's gaze, demanding, yet nurturing, a contradiction that set her resolve ablaze. "This piece," Sarah began, her voice steadying, "is about my family and the complexities we face together. The joy, the pain, it all intertwines into something beautiful." The words flowed out with increasing confidence as she spoke, an internal wrestling match of fear versus belief playing out as she unveiled her intentions. Elise stepped closer, inspecting the intricate grooves and textures of the wood that Sarah had painstakingly carved. "The narrative you're expressing here is profound. Your vulnerability is the very heart of art. It invites connection. But tell me, where does this vulnerability stem from for you?" The direct question felt like a mirror reflecting her innermost conflicts. Sarah hesitated, grappling with the delicate balance between honesty and fear of judgment. "I've always felt like I'm shadowed by what others expect of me," she admitted. "There's a fear that I'm not enough, that what I create won't resonate." Elise nodded, a knowing smile forming. "But that fear of not being enough is precisely what makes your art powerful. It's a universal struggle. Everyone can relate to feeling inadequate or unheard. In embracing those insecurities, you empower others." A new understanding began to settle within Sarah. Elise's words carved a path through doubt. Perhaps it wouldn't be the technical perfection of her piece that mattered most, but the honesty in its creation and the courage displayed in sharing her journey. Still, she was aware that acceptance didn't come easy. "How do I push through this fear?" she asked, a hint of desperation creeping into her tone. by continuing to create, even when the fear looms large. Each piece is an opportunity for growth, and each shared experience can forge new connections, Elise explained. Use these moments. Let them fuel your evolution as an artist. But always remain authentic. You are your strongest asset. Fresh resolve surged within Sarah as she absorbed Elise's encouragement. As the conversation evolved, her doubts began to dissolve like morning fog under a bright sun. It was becoming clearer that the process of creation was just as significant as the outcome. Each moment spent in her workshop shaped her identity. Elise's presence felt like a lighthouse guiding her through an expansive ocean of uncertainty. But just as Sarah felt she was finding her footing, a wave of doubt crashed back. What if I'm still not good enough? The words slipped out before she could catch them, raw with vulnerability. Then you keep trying, Elise replied, her tone firm yet gentle. Each step will teach you. You have to engage fully with your process. It's okay to create with the knowledge that every work might not resonate in the way you wish. Have faith in your journey. Sarah nodded, contemplating the strength found in moving forward despite her fear. With every answer and affirmation, she began to see the spectrum of her potential. She was evolving, gathering strength from her vulnerabilities rather than allowing them to define her. The session ended, and as Elise prepared to leave, a flicker of hope ignited within Sarah. But other questions swirled in her mind, unanswered queries that had the potential to upend her newfound clarity. If her art was a reflection of herself, how could she invite others to unravel their stories alongside hers? As Elise walked out the door, Sarah stood amidst her creations, the tension of anticipation blending with inspiration. It was time to begin anew, not just for herself, but to foster a space where others could explore their own vulnerabilities. What awaited Sarah as she expanded her vision? Would her journey find purpose in connecting with others to share these intimate dialogues of art and authenticity? The moment held limitless possibilities, and as she stepped towards her next creation, a stirring question unfolded in her heart. How far could her art go in challenging the narratives that define not only herself but also those around her? The workshop, now a sanctuary of raw emotion and resonating uncertainty, could feel Sarah's determination tightening into focus. She stood amid her creations, her heart racing not out of fear, but with a burgeoning curiosity that nudged at her consciousness. Each piece was no longer just wood and form. They were threads in the tapestry of her life, waiting to be woven into a narrative that transcended her own boundaries. Inspired by Elise's unwavering belief in her journey, Sarah took a deep breath and decided her next step wasn't merely about creating art, it was about creating connections. How could she invite others into this world of shared vulnerability? The stirring possibilities sent a jolt of energy through her, revealing latent ambitions she hadn't allowed herself to entertain before. She envisioned art workshops, intimate spaces where individuals could gather, express, and connect through the medium of creation. It seemed daunting yet thrilling. It was the kind of initiative that could step her out from her own shadows while illuminating the lives of others. But fear lingered around the edges of her thoughts like a persistent storm cloud. What if she failed to connect? What if her own insecurities surfaced under scrutiny? Sarah paused, feeling the familiar grip of self-doubt return, but this time, she confronted it head-on. You've come this far, and you can't turn back now, she murmured to herself, pulling the same strength she had harnessed during her discussion with Elise. Yes, if she was to establish workshops, she needed to develop a program that embodied the very essence of her artistic journey: vulnerability, authenticity, and collective healing. She grabbed a stack of sketch paper and began drafting ideas. With each line she drew, she crafted a curriculum that encouraged participants to tap into their own vulnerabilities and express them through art. She contemplated integrating elements of storytelling. What better way to explore the self than through shared experiences? The concept ignited a fire within her, empowering Sarah to believe in the transformative power of creativity when shared with others. Days turned into nights as Sarah immersed herself in her sketches and plans. Still, doubts lingered. She questioned whether she was prepared to facilitate such intimate encounters. She had nurtured her own vulnerabilities, but could she adeptly navigate the myriad stories that would emerge from others? It was during one of her late-night drafting sessions that clarity struck her. She need not be an expert. Her authenticity was her greatest asset. By opening her own wounds, she could guide others to do the same, demonstrating that flaws were merely the maps of personal journeys. There also lay an urgency, a weight to this exploration as she considered the healing power of shared narratives. With newfound excitement, her proposals transformed into structured outlines, a tangible representation of her yearning to develop a sense of community through art. As she wrapped her latest idea in a neat folder, Sarah felt both exhilarated and terrified. This was a leap into the unknown, a challenge that would require courage not just from her, but from everyone who sought to join. But it wasn't enough to stay cocooned in her workshop. She needed to test the waters. She had to reach out to local community centers, explore partnerships, and see if there was an authentic interest in what she proposed. The thought of stepping beyond the threshold into potential rejection gnawed at her, yet a different kind of determination began to rise within her. The prospect of beginning reached a tipping point, forcing her to act. Can I genuinely invite others to share their narratives? Would they even want to participate? As she prepared herself to take this next step, her heart pulsed with uncertainty, yet the possibilities grew beyond her self-inflicted borders. What would it take to face those who might echo her own fears? With a flicker of hope, Sarah decided it was time to initiate conversations to share her vision and seek connection. And so, with a deep breath and steady resolve, she stepped beyond her workshop, poised to confront the unknown, ready to plant the seeds of a transformative experience. But as she prepared for her first outreach meeting, another question surfaced, lingering like the mist of morning. Would her commitment to vulnerability help others confront their own, and could that become a catalyst for a movement she never anticipated? Sarah's heart raced as she approached the worn entrance of the local community center, each step amplifying her internal conflict. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that felt to her like fingers pulling her back toward her safe sanctuary. Would those inside be receptive to her vision? Or would they see through her facade, exposing her insecurities as unworthy? Taking a moment, she steadied her breath. This is about them, not you, she whispered, a mantra to ground her thoughts. She recalled that night spent immersing herself in her sketches, the vibrant imagery now blending with the reality of her surroundings. Stepping into the unfamiliar space seemed to amplify her doubts, yet she felt equally drawn by the potential to connect. As she entered, her gaze was met with faces both curious and cautious, lingering on homemade flyers that advertised her proposed art workshops. The room buzzed with the warm energy of people engaging in their own small crafts, conversations ebbing and flowing like a gentle tide. "Hi everyone, I'm Sarah," she introduced hesitantly, all eyes on her. "I'm hoping to start art workshops focused on exploring our stories through creativity." The words were tentative, yet they rang with the weight of her aspirations. She noticed a few nods, but one skeptical face stood out, an older woman with sharp features. "Who do you think you are to lead something like that?" the woman challenged, a mixture of disdain and curiosity laced in her tone. Caught off guard, Sarah felt a cold pang of embarrassment wash over her. Was this the moment her doubts would crystallize into something tangible? "I don't have all the answers," she answered, voice faltering slightly. "But I believe that our narratives, our vulnerabilities can connect us in a profound way." The room was quiet, the weight of her admission hanging in the air. Maybe this was the moment she had feared, but it also felt like a crucible, where her authenticity was being tested. Sarah searched the room for affirmations, and she caught a glimpse of surprise in the skeptical woman's eyes. Perhaps this venture had begun to spark an emotion beyond doubt. "I'm not asking anyone to share anything they're not comfortable with," she continued, finding strength in her vulnerability. "But what if we could create art that reflects not just our joys, but our struggles?" Slowly, the hesitant murmurs began to transform into a genuine interest. A man with a gentle demeanor leaned forward. "I think we could all use a space for that." Sarah's heart surged with an unexpected hope. Maybe this was the pivot she needed. They exchanged words, questions, and insights blossomed from the seeds of her ambitions. Each conversation became a thread, weaving the fabric of a new community forged from shared experiences. By the end of the evening, Sarah felt lighter, as if the intimate connections she had forged began to dissolve the uncertainties that had surrounded her. Yet lurking in the back of her mind was the woman's piercing gaze. What had prompted her initial skepticism? Could she transform potential critics into allies? In the heady excitement of new beginnings, Sarah felt a shadow creep into the corners of her mind. As she walked out of the community center, plans for her workshop swirling, a nagging question haunted her. Would she be able to navigate the complexities of personal narratives when the workshop began? And how would her own vulnerabilities hold up under scrutiny when others chose to share theirs? Stepping into the cool night air, she felt a mix of triumph and trepidation. The commitment to vulnerability was not just an invitation to others, it was a challenge she had to meet head-on. With each step, she resolved she would enhance not only her own understanding but also delve deeply into the stories hidden behind the faces she had yet to encounter. As Sarah contemplated the path ahead, a new question echoed in her mind, looming like a brick wall. Could this commitment to authenticity not only inspire others but push her further into the depths of her own healing? The following morning, Sarah awoke with a renewed sense of purpose, her previous night's worries mingling with a burgeoning determination. She knew that the workshops were not merely an exercise in sharing her artistic passion, they were becoming a pivotal point in her personal journey. Adjusting her floral print robe, she brewed coffee, the aroma mingling with her swirling thoughts. Her fingers lingered over her sketchbook, filled with half-finished illustrations and fragmented thoughts. The blank page before her teased her. What if she began by exploring her own narrative? Unlocking her own vulnerabilities through art could set the tone for others. What stories lay hidden within her, waiting to be drawn out? As she began to sketch, the characters on the page morphed into representations of her past struggles, moments that had shaped her perception of self-worth. A figure stood alone in the corner, echoing her fears of inadequacy. Another formed a defiant posture, one prepared to confront the shadows of her insecurities. The familiar pang of anxiety crept into her mind, but she dismissed it with each stroke of her pencil. This is not just about the art, she reminded herself. It's about the narratives we tell ourselves and how they shape us. Later that day, she met with Mara, her longtime friend, for lunch at a quaint cafe bursting with plants. Mara had always been her confidante, the one person who could truly pierce through Sarah's carefully curated facade. "How does it feel, putting yourself out there?" Mara asked, concern etching her features. "It's scary," Sarah admitted, "but it feels necessary. I think it's time I confronted some of my own narratives. You know, the fears and insecurities I often shy away from." Mara tilted her head, examining her. "But what if you don't like what you find? What if it becomes too much? You've built this wonderful, safe bubble around you." The question hung in the air, heavy with truth. Sarah had skirted around her past for so long, seeking safety in the realm of art rather than delving deeper. "That's the risk, isn't it?" she replied, her voice firm. "But what's the alternative? A life half-lived?" Mara's silence was an invitation for Sarah to further probe her own depths. It dawned on her then that confronting her past wasn't a path laden with failure, it was a potential for empowerment. "I think if I can honestly explore my own story, it can help others feel safer doing the same." Armed with fresh ideas and newfound clarity, Sarah left the cafe determined to dive deeper into her art. As she walked home, she mulled over Mara's words, realizing that the real challenge wouldn't merely be in guiding others. It would be in facing her own truths without the mask of pretense. Each brushstroke would become an act of bravery. That evening, in a fit of spontaneity, she decided to create a short video as an introduction to her workshops. "Art is more than just creation, it's a journey," she spoke to the camera, the lights casting a warm glow around her. "I'm committing to this journey with you, as we explore our stories together." She hit the stop button, breathless but invigorated. But as she watched the playback, a wave of self-doubt washed over her. Was she truly ready to navigate the complex emotions that artistic exploration inevitably uncovered? Could she maintain her authenticity amidst the inevitable critiques? In that moment of uncertainty, Sarah experienced a revelation. Authenticity would require not just vulnerability but also courage. With a heavy sigh, she realized she was on the brink of something transformative, though the path ahead remained obscured with shadows. As she lay awake that night, her thoughts spiraled into the question that loomed larger than before: what if I can harness this fear to fuel my growth, rather than let it hold me back? With the dawn on the horizon, Sarah felt a flicker of anticipation. The time was approaching when she would face her reflections, both the beautiful and the broken. Would shedding light on her hidden fears empower her, or would it shatter her? Carefully constructed image? Sarah rose the next morning with an electric pulse of determination coursing through her veins. The sunlight danced through her window, igniting a renewed sense of clarity. Today was the day she would embrace her fears and step into the unknown in exploration of not just her artwork, but the deeper stories that lay buried within. After a cup of coffee that felt more like fuel than comfort, she opened her sketchbook, ready to confront the emotionally charged task ahead. The blank pages no longer felt daunting, they felt like a canvas on which she could dissect the narratives that had shaped her successes and failures alike. As her pencil glided over the page, she found herself depicting fragments of her past, twisting them into an intricate tapestry that echoed her life experiences. She could feel her earlier anxiety dissipating with every stroke. Instead, a sense of excitement began to bloom. She sketched a figure that clutched a paintbrush, trembling yet resolute, the embodiment of her artistic self, poised to break free from restraints that had stifled her growth. Each character she rendered seemed to resonate more profoundly than the last, stirring echoes of forgotten dreams and unmet aspirations. Sarah paused momentarily, her thoughts drifting to the upcoming workshop. What if participants were drawn to her authenticity, to someone willing to be vulnerable? The idea was exhilarating yet terrifying, igniting a flicker of self-doubt deep within her. What if I'm not enough? The whisper of her inner critic was familiar, but this time Sarah paused to confront it. What if my story is worth sharing? She countered, the resolve in her voice finding strength in the solitude of her studio. As the day progressed, Sarah began preparing materials for her workshop, meticulously selecting artworks from her past to showcase alongside the new pieces that represented her present struggles and victories. Each selection felt intentional, a piece of the narrative puzzle that would guide the participants on their own journeys. Her heart raced with anticipation, a mix of anxiety and empowerment, a reminder that she was capable of something bigger than herself. Later in the evening, she sat in front of her video equipment, recalling the invigorating energy she felt the previous night. This time, as she turned on the camera, she spoke with clarity, her voice confident and firm. The purpose of art is to heal, to confront, and to connect, she declared. It's about exploring not just what we create, but what we avoid within ourselves. After recording her message, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over her. For the first time, she realized that her narrative was not only about depicting struggle, it was about sharing the journey toward understanding and embracing one's insecurities. Those insecurities would be a source of connection with others, not a reason for shame. When she reviewed the footage, her heart still fluttered, but self-doubt was now tempered by excitement. Maybe, she'd begun to think, this is the tipping point from which I can grow. But another thought punctured her newfound confidence. What if the workshop attendees didn't resonate with her story? What if they couldn't see the beauty in her vulnerability? Her palms went clammy as the shadow of doubt crept back in, but instead of allowing it to defeat her, Sarah took a deep breath. This is the work, she reminded herself. Embracing both the fear and the excitement is part of the process. With teetering resolve, Sarah ended her evening by jotting down a few reflection notes, the little triumphs pushing her forward, and the hesitations she still needed to confront. As she settled into bed, exhaustion tugging at her, she knew she was standing on the edge of something potentially transformational. But it was the next day that lingered in her thoughts. The workshop awaited, a stage upon which her fears would either crack open the door to growth or slam it shut. Would her courage be enough to guide others into the same light she sought to uncover for herself? The dawn was creeping in, and she faced the new day with a mixture of trepidation and excitement, knowing the moment of truth was about to arrive. What awaited her was unknown, but deep down, she sensed it would be an honest reflection of the journey she had started. As the sun rose and illuminated her workshop, Sarah stood at the threshold, her heart pounding in rhythm with the pulse of opportunity that lay ahead. The day of the first workshop had finally arrived, a culmination of her own fears and aspirations. The lingering doubts that had once chained her began to feel lighter, though the weight of responsibility still tugged at her. She had envisioned this day countless times but never fully grasped the transformation it could actually ignite. Sarah meticulously arranged the space, ensuring each handcrafted item displayed reflected the essence of her journey. Flashes of memory danced through her mind, the hours spent carving and shaping wood, breathing life into each piece while confronting her inner turmoil. The installations, the symbols of her family's struggles, her own uncertainties, would for the first time become a springboard for collective healing. As attendees started to trickle in, a warmth enveloped her. Familiar faces and new ones intermingled. There was a shared air of excitement tinged with apprehension, and Sarah could feel her heart swell. This was no longer just about her art. It was now about the common threads that bound their lives together. She began the workshop by sharing her story, articulating her journey through moments of vulnerability and uncertainty. Art is not just about crafting objects, it's about understanding our narratives and using them to connect with others, she said, her voice steady, resonating with newfound confidence. In that moment, the manifestation of her fears became a bridge, pulling her away from isolation. As the participants engaged, sharing their own stories while prepped with paintbrushes and canvases, Sarah felt a surge of fulfillment. Each laugh, tear, and exchange wove a vibrant tapestry of authenticity. For the first time, she was leading with her heart, fostering a space where vulnerability was celebrated rather than shunned. It was beautiful to witness her fears dissipated, replaced by a deep-seated assurance that she was precisely where she was meant to be. A moment of revelation struck when one participant, a shy woman named Lila, timidly shared her struggle with feeling unseen in her art. "I've always thought my work wasn't good enough," she admitted, her voice catching as Sarah nodded thoughtfully, recalling the echoes of her own past insecurities. "Your voice deserves to be heard, Lila," Sarah responded, the words pouring out effortlessly. "Every stroke and color has a story, don't minimize your journey." Empowered by the exchange, Lila picked up her brush with determination, her canvas soon reflecting hues that mirrored the newfound courage blooming within her. As the workshop unfolded, Sarah began to realize the profound impact of her own transformation. She was no longer the woman wrapped in self-doubt, waiting for validation. She was a leader, an artist committed to authenticity. Conversations blossomed, walls crumbled, and the energy shifted. An alchemy of shared narrative had ignited something special. By the end of the session, Sarah stood amidst a sea of creativity and collaboration, her heart swelling with a blend of pride and satisfaction. Each of the participants had embraced their narratives. They didn't simply create art, they established connections. This wasn't just her victory, it was a collective celebration of resilience. As everyone packed up, Lila approached Sarah, tears of joy glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for this," she said, a genuine smile illuminating her face. "It felt like finding a piece of myself." Sarah's heart warmed with affirmation. She had accomplished more than showcasing her work. She had nurtured a community of craftsmen and women willing to dissect their limitations and embrace their artistic souls. It was a powerful realization that her initial fears had transformed into a foundation for growth, not just for her but for others like Lila. Through every brushstroke shared, she proved that vulnerability could birth strength. With the workshop concluded, Sarah's next steps felt clear. She intended to make this initiative a regular occurrence, hosting workshops each month where anyone could come to express their truths through art. It was no longer about her solitary struggle. It was about fostering an ongoing journey toward connection, acceptance, and creativity. Stepping back into her workshop, Sarah took a moment to breathe in the familiar scent of wood and paint. She felt a sense of solid confidence washing over her, a recognition that her craft was more than mere decoration. It was a channel for stories yearning to be told. She had conquered her fears and proven that her voice was worthy of being shared. As she closed the door behind her, a smile crossed her face, the weight of expectation shifting into a satisfying recognition of personal achievement. She felt grounded in her competence, unshackled by doubt, and ready to embrace the future waiting ahead, a future filled with connection, creativity, and an ever-evolving narrative that would resonate through the lives she hoped to touch. Sarah had not only transformed herself, she had opened a path for others to do the same. In this journey, she realized the true art was not just her craftsmanship but the courage to share it, and invite others to unveil their own stories along the way. Now, the moment to take action has come for you. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss our next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Trust us, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this inspiring ending. And most importantly, share instantly this with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion about personal transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share.